You are watching the video version of the Marketing Should Be Fun podcast. We are so glad that you are here. If you prefer to listen to podcasts, you can find the Marketing Should Be Fun show on any of your favorite podcast platforms, whether that's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, anywhere else. But most of all, we're so glad you're here, and I hope that you enjoy today's conversation. Well, hello, and welcome back to another episode of Marketing Should Be Fun. It is just me today, and it's so good to be here with you. I hope that you're having a great week whenever you are watching this. Of course, normally at the start of Marketing Should Be Fun episodes, Kelsey or Mitch or someone on the team is usually with me, and we usually do this or that. So in lieu of that, I just wanted to share some things that I've been enjoying lately. This is a super random, just little idea, but I figured, I would share a little, some content that I have been enjoying lately with you. So I, every once in a while, get excited about golf. I have a couple buddies who are really, really into golf lately and have kind of gotten me into it as well. There's a few YouTube channels that just have some really great golf content, I think. Overall, I'm really not that big into watching like professional golf and those kinds of things, which maybe I should be more. I don't know. But there's a few channels on YouTube that I have really enjoyed lately, and I just wanted to share them with you. So one of them is called Saint St. Andre Golf. They make a lot of funny videos and have started doing some longer form content as well. I recently found a channel called Not a Scratch Golfer that just kind of like normalizes like regular golf, and I love it. There's a lot of like just high quality, enjoyable content there too. And then just today, someone introduced me to a channel called Random Golf Club, and literally the production quality on these videos are nuts. It is so crazy. And so if you're into golf or think you might be, there's some just free content ideas for you, some things that you can enjoy. So that is in place of our this or that today. But I have a kind of interesting topic that I want to talk about on today's episode, and it's the topic of analytics. And I really think, honestly, like we don't talk a ton about like in-depth analytics and things like that. We really talk a lot more a higher level when it comes to content. Honestly, I mean, analytics and how you view them and what value they should hold and all of those things. I mean, this could be a topic that you explore for a very long time. This is a deep topic. It's a rich topic, really. But it's easy to kind of get caught in the weeds when it comes to analytics. And I just wanted to share just a quick conversation that we had with one of our clients the other day that I thought was just a really valuable kind of reminder when it comes to analytics overall, is that it's really easy. This is something Kelsey and I talk about all the time as well, but like it's really easy to just get caught up in the analytics when it comes to a single piece of content. We just start thinking about like, hey, I posted this a week ago. This has only gotten, this many views or this many likes, or I just shared this podcast episode. It has 100 less listens than all my other podcast episodes, or I just shared this video and it hasn't had any engagement for 2 days. Like we just get really caught up in the individual pieces of what we're posting and how those are performing in the short term, that we actually can lose sight of how our content marketing strategy is performing overall in the long term. And I just want to share this just quick example with you to illustrate that. So we were talking with one of our clients. They're in the consulting space, and they launched a podcast towards the start of this year. So it's been pretty fresh, pretty new, and they launched it. We're really excited about it and had seen some traction with it. It was successful overall. They had garnered some interest, and they were growing at a steady rate, much like we see with a lot of the podcasts that we're able to support, particularly the newer ones. So we got on a call with this client, and we were talking through some of the statistics that we had seen. And as we kind of walked through it, we kind of sensed some like discouragement or some uneasiness because it was really interesting as we looked at their kind of dashboard for their podcast. We saw that if you were looking at the episodes individually, it looked like their podcast was actually like declining. It looked like, if you just looked at the episode downloads, that less people were listening to every single episode. Because that's what it showed, right? You might have had 300 downloads on episode 1, then like 287 on episode 2, all the way down to like 120 on like the most recent. And it just kind of looked like this sort of curve down. But when we pulled back and we looked at, well, how is your podcast performing overall? It was the exact opposite. And we saw it was a very steady trend up. Every single month, they were having more and more and more people listening to their show. Even though when they looked at the individual episodes, it looked like less and less and less people were listening to their show. So, how does that make any sense? Well, it's because people, when they were coming in to listen to the show, were actually listening to the first few episodes of their show before continuing through the rest. They weren't starting with the most recent, they were starting with the beginning. And especially because this is a newer show, it totally made sense. People could see episode 1 pretty quickly in their podcast feed, and it totally made sense to go to that episode and start listening from there to kind of catch up from what they've missed. And I thought it was really interesting because as we were showing that to our client, it suddenly clicked for them. They were like, oh, that makes so much more sense. They were like, the story that I was telling myself about this was a very different story than kind of what you're showing me right now. And, this is just like really kind of putting my mind at ease to see the kind of aggregate numbers when it comes to the podcast. And when I heard them say that, I was like, oh, I mean, I think that this is something that a lot of people should probably hear and be reminded of, is that when it comes to anything with content marketing, is there's going to be just a natural story that's told in the whole, in the aggregate, cumulatively as you're doing a lot of it. They're going to have pieces of content that, uh, you know, don't hit as well, or maybe don't get as much engagement. But that doesn't have to be what you focus on in executing the strategy, because it's much more about the bigger picture than it is even about the individual pieces. For this podcast that we are supporting this client on, those other episodes that are more recent, they'll catch up over time. As more people are coming in, people will go back and listen to those episodes. There are going to be people who started from the beginning and are going to be working their way through the rest of the content. And there will be some people who, kind of fall off the train and figure out that, their content might not be the best for them. And other people will really, really resonate. And all of that is okay because content performs on that human level. This example of the podcast was a perfect example of that reality, of letting content play on that human level. Because people were making their own choices. They were deciding how they wanted to interact with the podcast. And when we're putting out content and saying, you need to interact with it this way or I'm going to be disappointed, then you are just setting yourself up for discouragement. And eventually, you're setting yourself on that path to not stick with it for a long time. When you are just kind of putting it out there and saying, this is here for your value, I want you to be able to make the most out of it, and then just letting it take on a life of its own, essentially, that is when you really start to see results. And that's when you're able to internally stick with it and keep it going. So here's the message for today's episode. When it comes to analytics and how you are kind of viewing the performance of the content that you're creating, I want to encourage you to take a step back. Don't get too caught up in the nitty gritty of every single individual thing that you're doing. Maybe learn from those things. If there's something that you just notice, hey, this is performed differently. But don't get caught up in it. It's okay. It's all part of the process. It's normal. People are human and you are human. And a lot of the things that you are creating will just connect differently, especially if it's a different style or a different topic. And all of those things are good. But when you are looking at what's working and should I keep doing it, don't make those decisions based on a narrow lane of information. Make sure that you are making those decisions on the aggregate cumulative information that you have learned from a channel or from a strategy. It would have been very easy for this client, had they not taken the time to look a little bit deeper, to say, wow, this is really discouraging. Every episode we post gets less and less listens, instead of taking a step back and saying, oh, well, actually, our podcast is still growing every month. This actually is a very good use of our time and energy, and it's clearly connecting with people and people are talking about it. You are more easily able to kind of take that correct mindset and how you approach your content. All right, well, there you have it. Just a shorter episode for you today, but I hope you have a great rest of your week, however much is left of it. And we will see you right back here for the next episode of Marketing Should Be Fun.